here we are continuing on with this series for the Canon 60D in video number 4, and we're going to move on to shooting menu number 2. We finished off on the last video on the flash control menu, where we had a look at all the controls for the inbuilt flash and an external one. So we'll go to shooting menu number 2, which is the red tab with 2 dots. And first we can see exposure compensation and auto exposure bracketing. So if we have a look inside there, we can either choose to make an image darker, brighter with exposure compensation, or exposure bracketing or auto exposure bracketing, which is actually enabled at the moment. We can tell the camera to automatically take a shot 2 stops under, zeroed out, 2 stops over. Useful for bracketing if you're not quite sure what your exposure should be, so you can take away a number of files and choose the right one later. Or you can also use it for HDR purposes as well, so it will do 3 shots for you. Exposure compensation is something that you can also get to in your normal shooting menus as well. There we go. If you may notice, I've got my camera set to go to the My menu straight away whenever I go into the menus, because I've got listed here the most common ones that I use, but we'll come to that later. So we'll go back down to shooting menu number 2. And next we have Auto Lighting Optimizer. Now, this can either be set disabled, low, standard, or strong. And what this will do, it will automatically optimize the settings or the lighting within the scene. In particular, if you're dealing with high contrast scenes that you're photographing. And really, it's only applicable if you're shooting JPEG or using Canon's own software to edit the image later on. Software like Photoshop, Lightroom and other packages won't understand what the auto lighting optimizer is, so they won't really take it into account. Not quite sure with the Lightroom you can build a profile to kind of simulate it, don't know, never really tried it, but generally it's only for JPEG and processing using Canon's digital photo professional software. Typically I run with that off because I want to have full control in post-production with whatever I do, and also I use Lightroom and Photoshop, which don't really do anything with that anyway. Next option we have picture style. Now picture styles is a common thing with Canon cameras. I think they're called, I can't remember what else they're called on other camera models, but they'll have something similar. And if we go into here, we have options of standard, and these show the contrast and brightness saturation settings for that particular picture style. You can edit these by pressing info and then changing the sharpness, contrast, saturation and colour tone parameters to make your own, or just adjust the profiles which are already there. Now I typically use my camera on standard because it gives me a close image to what I'm expecting to do after I've edited a raw file, so I leave it on that. We also have portrait, landscape, neutral, faithful, monochrome. I have changed the monochrome one a little bit on the 60D just to give me a closer preview image, the JPEG preview, which comes from the raw file, so I know when I'm shooting black and white in camera, the raw file is still in colour, but the JPEG preview, it gives me a good idea of what I'm going to get later on in post-production. And you can also have user-defined profiles there. Now you can also go into these things and edit these user-defined as well, and of course you can set these up based on a starting profile like standard, landscape or others, or you can go straight in and customize them if you wish. Now these are also applicable to video mode, so if you find that you're shooting a lot of video and you want to try and get the most out of the video files, typically people will customize an image profile for it, and they'll flatten it all out and they'll do the color correction and everything like that in post-production, just to give them a little bit more leeway in the editing phase when shooting video. So we'll come out of that and we'll set the standard. There we go. Now white balance. White balance. This is an option to change the color temperature of light that you're shooting in. Any kind of light source has a particular color temperature. Tungsten light, incandescence, typical indoor house lights. You've got flash, which is flash white balance, daylight, cloudy and so forth. The annoying thing about the 60D, it doesn't have a button on the top LCD plate, which is on top of the camera up here, to change white balance. You've got to come into a menu, and that's why I have it registered on the My menu. So if we go into here, we've got auto white balance. This is for use really when you don't know what the hell kind of light that you're shooting in, and the camera will kind of figure it out. It's fairly accurate, although frankly Canon cameras have always sucked at incandescent tungsten on auto white balance. They're just too orange, too warm. Then you have daylight. The approximate Kelvin value, that's the value of the colour temperature, is 5200. Shade, cloudy, tungsten, fluorescent or white fluorescent, flash, custom white balance, which you can set off a grey card, a white piece of paper or a white balance target, and you can also choose a Kelvin value based on a known value of lighting that you're using. Similar here for this video lighting, they're 5400 Kelvin lights, so my 5D2, which is recording this, is set to 5400 Kelvin. So you can do the same on the 60D. If you find that flash white balance, the normal one, isn't quite right for you, you can do some tests and find a flash white balance or find a white balance Kelvin value that suits you better. Dial that in and always use that when you shoot flash if you wish to. Bear in mind your modifier that you change will change the colour temperature of the light as well. So we'll leave that on flash. Custom white balance. Now you can actually set custom white balance from a reference image, a picture of a grey card, a white piece of paper or a white balance target to dial that in, and then you select which image for the camera to reference that white balance data off. There is no image on here at the moment, as we can see. So we'll go back. Now, white balance shift and bracketing. Well, this looks complicated. We can shift the white balance, and we have amber, green, blue and magenta. We can bracket these if we wish to automatically, or we can shift and adjust. If we find that images when we take them are coming out too green maybe, we can dial in some magenta to counteract that. If they're coming out too blue or too cold in colour temperature, we can dial in some amber. And it's just a reference point that you dial in, plus green, plus amber, according to your taste that you want, based on your test images that you've done. And this is not something I've really messed with myself during shooting, because I will correct the raw file, white balance and colour correction in post-production. I usually just use flash white balance for flash, sunny white balance for sunny, cloudy for cloudy, and then I'll just dial it in later on and synchronise images providing the lighting is consistent. But this is there should you wish to use it. Obviously pressing info will clear anything that you have set. So we'll go back. Colour space. Now, just quickly on this. The colour space, typically most cameras will let you choose sRGB, which is red, green, blue, or Adobe RGB. There are other colour space profiles out there, like ProPhoto RGB, and probably a few others I can't remember right now. Most devices that you use, your mobile phones, your iPad, web-based images, are all sRGB. And this is my argument for sticking with sRGB. People say that Adobe RGB has a much wider colour gamut. Yes, it does, that's true. So if I was shooting JPEG only, I might consider using Adobe RGB for that wider colour gamut. And where you will find that help you is, say for example, if you've got a picture where you have a blue sky in, and it starts to go from a dark blue sky to a little bit lighter. The gradation of that dark blue to light blue, you may have some kind of banding on sRGB, whereas Adobe RGB will probably help with that. The reason why I don't switch to Adobe RGB is because I shoot RAW and I correct everything later in post-production and I output accordingly. So I'm dealing with raw data, so I don't really need to worry about it. Lightroom, as a raw data editor, is dealing with the 14-bit RAW file from the camera, so I have no worries at all from using sRGB. And like I say, it's an industry standard. Every device kind of knows that and uses it. And even down to the monitor that you're doing your editing on, there's not a lot of monitors out there that can show the full colour gamut of Adobe RGB. And I'm pretty sure the monitor that you're using, unless it's a really high-end one, won't show the full colour gamut anyway. So that's why I stick with sRGB. So that's shooting menu number 2. Okay, just quick run through, and what we'll do in the next video, we'll go to shooting menu number 3 and have a look what's in those. Okay, I've decided to do shooting menu number 3 combined with in video number 4, because as you saw it's only got 2 items. So we'll quickly go to red tab dot 3, shooting menu number 3, and just have a look at these two just to finish this off. I had to stop and restart the video due to the recording time limits. Okay, so dust delete data. Now this can actually track and remove dust spots automatically from your images. It doesn't remove dust from your sensor, you have to actually clean that yourself. I mean, your camera, the 60D, will have a sensor cleaning feature which just kind of vibrates, sonically vibrates the sensor or the area above it to remove some dust. Doesn't always work, so manual cleaning is inevitable on a DSLR. Even if you leave one lens welded to it for a number of years, dust will get in because it's not fully weather sealed as a camera. So what this will do, using the software which comes with the Canon camera, it will track points on the sensor and where it recognises dust and automatically, or try to automatically, remove them. I have never used this. I clean my own sensors, and any dust spots that I do find I usually deal with in Lightroom, and because there's only a few generally, it's pretty quick to do. I don't generally use the Canon software for the editing, so this is left as is. Now you'll see here, last updated, it gives you a date and timestamp, so it remembers dust tracking or dust delete data. So it remembers where dust spots are, and you can probably confirm the points where the dust spots are once you bring images into the Canon software, and you can keep updating this so it can automatically remove them. I can imagine there comes a time when this won't suffice and you're going to have to clean your sensor, so I don't really bother using this. So we'll come out of that. Auto ISO. Now the camera can be set to auto ISO, and what you can do is assign limits. You can say, okay, you can choose the ISO for me up to a maximum of 400, 800, 1600, 3200 or even 6400. The 60D will go up to 12,800, but that's not an option there, and frankly you don't want it to, it looks like crap. So this, you can cap what the maximum ISO is if you are using auto ISO. Not really something I use a lot. I do use it on occasion, and I just ramp it up to 3200 as I'm fine with that. Okay, so that's just a quick look at shooting menu number 3 because it was so short. We'll tag it on to the end of the other video, and in the next video what we will do is go on to shooting menu number 4, which we can see here. Now as always, if you have any questions, stick them in the comments below, chuck me an email, or send me a message on Facebook, YouTube, whatever, and I'll try to get back to you. And you know, the best thing you can do really to get to know your camera is to, yes, okay, you can watch tutorial videos, but just read the manual and sit there and press buttons, move dials, and figure out what's going on. Now I also run a YouTube channel and a website called New to Photo, shameless plug here, with a friend of mine, Mark Bodie, and where we do tutorials which aren't camera specific like this is. So if you want to head over to there and subscribe, you can find all the information on newtophoto.com. We appreciate you following and liking and subscribing over there as well. And until the next video, I'll catch you guys soon.